Commander Zeph Corvain stood at the edge of the massive council chamber, watching as representatives from 12 different worlds took their seats. The Kepler Station meeting hall stretched out before him like a great arena, with curved walls that seemed to go up forever. Blue light from the nearby star cast strange shadows across the alien faces that filled the room. His hands shook slightly as he held the datapad containing his report. 27 years of intelligence work had led him to this moment, and he knew that what he was about to say would sound impossible to most of the beings in this room, but he had seen the evidence with his own eyes. He had studied the reports that came from the Outer Rim, the ones that most officials dismissed as exaggerated field reports. The humans of Sol 3 were not what they appeared to be. High Chancellor, Vextar called the meeting to order with a sharp crack of his ceremonial staff. The insectoid leader's compound eyes swept across the assembly as his translator device rendered his clicking speech into Galactic Common. We gather today to discuss the primitive world designated Sol 3, known to its inhabitants as Earth. 3 of our member civilizations have presented invasion proposals for this system. Corvain felt his stomach tighten. He had requested this emergency session, hoping to prevent what he knew would be a disaster. But looking at the confident faces around him, he wondered if anyone would listen. Admiral Thex of the Hegemony rose first. The tall, gray-skinned warrior's voice carried easily across the chamber. Honored council members, my fleet stands ready to bring the Sol system under proper galactic authority. Our scans show a world of primitive beings who have barely begun to explore their own star system. They possess no faster-than-light travel, no energy weapons, and no unified planetary government. A single battle group of 200 ships should be sufficient to secure their surrender. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Hegemony had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Their military record spoke for itself. Next came Overmind Prime, the collective consciousness that spoke for the entire collective species. The pale, elongated humanoid's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. The collective has also analyzed this world. We concur with the Hegemony's assessment. These humans show no signs of advanced technology or military capability. However, we propose a different approach. Rather than conquest, we suggest assimilation. Their genetic diversity could prove useful to our collective consciousness. More nods around the chamber. The collective's biotechnology was among the most advanced in the galaxy. If they wanted to assimilate a species, few could resist. Finally, Emperor Vaxith himself had come to speak for the Draconian Empire. The massive reptilian ruler's presence filled the chamber with an aura of barely controlled violence. The Empire requires new subjects to fuel our expansion. This Earth world will serve perfectly. Our intelligence suggests they are divided into numerous competing factions, making them ideal for subjugation. 1,000 ships should be more than adequate to demonstrate our power. The 3 proposals hung in the air like a death sentence. Corvain knew he had to act now before the vote was called. Honored council members, he called out, his voice cutting through the discussions. I request permission to present counter-evidence to these proposals. Chancellor Vexitar's antennae twitched with irritation. Commander Corvain, your request is noted, but surely a single intelligence officer cannot override the combined assessments of 3 major military powers. With respect, Chancellor, I have classified information that these assessments have not considered. Information that could save thousands of lives. The chamber fell silent. Corvain activated his datapad, and the holographic display in the center of the room flickered to life. Images of human faces appeared, rotating slowly in the blue light. 6 months ago, a Hegemony reconnaissance patrol encountered a human research vessel in the outer reaches of their system. The patrol consisted of 12 advanced scout ships. The human vessel was a primitive chemical fuel craft with a crew of only 8. Admiral Thex leaned forward. Yes, we received that report. Our forces easily disabled their ship. That's where the report ends in your files, Corvain said grimly. But my intelligence network has the rest of the story. Dr. Lisa Murphy, the lead scientist on that human vessel, was not captured. She and her team somehow escaped, taking with them detailed scans of Hegemony technology. The chamber erupted in skeptical chatter. Corvain raised his voice to continue. 3 weeks later, that same research team attacked and captured a hegemony supply depot. They had reverse-engineered our shield technology and improved it. The depot's entire garrison was taken prisoner by 8 humans using weapons they had built from stolen hegemony designs. Admiral Thek stood up angrily. That's impossible. Primitive beings cannot simply copy our technology. I have the security footage, Corvain replied, and new images appeared in the hologram. The assembled council members watched in stunned silence as human figures in makeshift armor moved through a hegemony facility with devastating efficiency. The humans fought with a combination of calculated precision and wild improvisation that seemed to confuse the defending forces. There's more, Corvain continued. 2 months ago, Admiral Jake Morrison of the human military encountered a collective survey fleet near their moon. The fleet consisted of 36 ships conducting routine biological surveys. Morrison had only 12 primitive spacecraft. Overmind, Prime's voice carried a note of concern. Our survey fleet reported successful completion of their mission. Your survey fleet was destroyed, Corvain said flatly. Every ship. Morrison's forces used tactics that our military computers cannot even model. They attacked from 17 different directions simultaneously, using their own ships as weapons when their ammunition ran out. The few survivors reported that the humans fought as if they welcomed death, as long as they could take enemies with them. The holographic display now showed wreckage floating in space around Earth's moon. The twisted metal of collective ships glowed in the pale light. These are isolated incidents, Emperor Vaxith rumbled. Individual encounters with unusually resourceful humans. They prove nothing about the species as a whole. Corvain had saved the worst for last. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, but the chamber's acoustics carried his words to every corner. Your Imperial Scout Fleet designated Talon 7 disappeared 8 months ago while conducting deep reconnaissance of the Sol system. You reported it as a navigation error, lost in hyperspace. But my sources found the wreckage 3 weeks ago, scattered across an asteroid field in the outer Sol system. The humans had somehow detected ships using full stealth technology and destroyed them before they could even send a distress signal. The silence that followed was deafening. Emperor Vaxth's eyes burned with rage, but Corvain could see uncertainty there as well. You're asking us to believe, Chancellor Vextar said slowly, that a species without faster-than-light travel has somehow defeated advance forces from 3 of our most powerful civilizations. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that our intelligence is wrong, Corvain replied, that we have fundamentally misunderstood what these humans are capable of. I'm asking you to postpone these invasions until we can gather more information. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Corvain presented every piece of evidence he had gathered, every report that had been dismissed as impossible or exaggerated. He showed them tactical analyses that suggested human military thinking operated on principles completely foreign to galactic warfare doctrine. He presented psychological profiles that painted a picture of a species that seemed to thrive on conflict and adapt to threats with terrifying speed. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. 3 separate invasion fleets would be dispatched to Sol 3 within the next 6 months. The hegemony would go first, followed by the collective, and finally the Empire. As the council members filed out of the chamber, discussing logistics and timetables, Corvain remained at his post. He stared at the holographic display now showing Earth as it appeared from space, a small blue world that seemed utterly peaceful and harmless. He had tried to warn them. He had shown them the evidence. But they could not see past their own assumptions about what primitive meant. They looked at Earth's apparent lack of advanced technology and saw weakness. They could not understand that sometimes the most dangerous predator was the one that looked harmless until it was too late. Corvain began composing his next report, knowing it would likely be his last. When the fleets returned, if they returned, the galaxy would finally understand what he had been trying to tell them. But by then it would be far, far too late. 6 months had passed since the council meeting, and Fleet Admiral Thex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small yellow star grow larger on the view screen. The Sol system spread out before him like a simple puzzle waiting to be solved. His fleet of 200 ships moved through space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the power of the hegemony's most advanced technology. "Sir, we're receiving primitive radio signals from the third planet," his communications officer reported. "Music, news broadcasts, entertainment programs, nothing that suggests they know we're here." Thex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Exactly as expected. Begin broadcasting our surrender demands on all frequencies. Let these humans know their betters have arrived." The message that went out across Earth's airwaves was simple and direct. The hegemony had come to bring order to their world. Resistance would be met with total destruction. Surrender would be rewarded with a place in the galactic community as a subject species. They had 24 hours to respond. On Earth, General Pete Collins sat in the command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, screens showed the hegemony fleet taking positions throughout the solar system. His officers moved with calm efficiency, their faces showing no sign of the fear that Admiral Thex expected to see. "Sir, all defensive positions are ready," reported his second-in-command. "Dr. Wright's teams have finished installing the new weapon systems. Captain Hayes reports that all fighter squadrons are armed and ready." Collins nodded grimly. They had been preparing for this day since the first alien scout ship had been detected 8 months ago. The wreckage from those early encounters had given them everything they needed to level the playing field, but the aliens didn't know that yet. "Send our response," Collins ordered. "Tell them we decline their generous offer." Admiral Thex received Earth's reply with disbelief. 3 words: "Come and take it." "Impossible," he muttered. "They must not understand the situation. Begin the demonstration, destroy their moon bases and satellite networks, show them our power." The hegemony fleet opened fire on what they thought were primitive space installations. Energy beams lanced out across the darkness, expecting to find easy targets. Instead, they struck defensive shields that blazed to life with stolen hegemony technology, improved and strengthened by human engineering. "Sir, the targets are shielded," his weapons officer reported with confusion. "Their defensive systems are using our own shield frequencies." Before Admiral Thex could respond, his ship shuddered under impact. Warning lights flashed across his bridge as something struck their hull with tremendous force. "Report," he shouted. "Small craft attacking from multiple vectors," came the panicked reply. "They're too fast for our targeting systems." Through the chaos, Admiral Thex caught glimpses of the human fighters on his screens. They were small, angular craft that moved like angry insects, darting between his massive warships with impossible speed. But what shocked him most was their tactics. The human pilots weren't trying to stay safe. They flew straight at his ships, firing weapons that looked suspiciously similar to hegemony pulse cannons. Captain Ben Hayes pulled his fighter into a sharp turn, avoiding the energy beams that filled the space around him. His squadron of 24 pilots followed his lead, weaving through the alien formation like dancers performing a deadly ballet. "Remember what Dr. Wright taught us," he called over the radio. "Their shields can't handle rapid frequency changes. Hit them with everything and switch frequencies every 3 seconds." The human fighters attacked with a coordination that confused the alien fleet. They struck hard and fast, then vanished into the darkness before the hegemony ships could respond. But more importantly, they fought with a reckless courage that the aliens couldn't understand. When Hayes saw his wingman's fighter take a direct hit, he didn't retreat. Instead, he guided his damaged craft straight into the bridge of the alien ship that had killed his friend. The explosion lit up space like a small star. "They're ramming our ships," Admiral Thex's tactical officer screamed. "The pilots are using their craft as weapons." But the worst was yet to come. As the space battle raged, human troops in modified alien armor began appearing on hegemony ships. They had somehow found a way to board the alien vessels during the confusion of the fighter attack. Colonel Rick Santos led the first boarding party onto the hegemony command cruiser. His team of 30 soldiers moved through the alien corridors like ghosts, their stolen technology allowing them to bypass the ship's security systems. They had studied the layout of hegemony vessels from the wreckage of previous encounters, and they knew exactly where to strike. The hegemony crew had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought with weapons that had been reverse-engineered from their own technology, but improved in ways that seemed impossible. More terrifying was the way they fought. They moved through the ship not like soldiers trying to capture it, but like predators hunting prey. "Sir, they're in engineering," a hegemony officer reported to Admiral Thex. "They've taken control of our power systems." "And they're on Deck 7, another voice added. "They've captured the weapons control room." Admiral Thex realized with growing horror that his massive warship was being conquered from the inside by a handful of humans. It should have been impossible. His crew outnumbered the boarding party by hundreds to one, but somehow, the humans had turned his own ship into a trap. Dr. Amy Wright watched the battle from her command post on Earth's surface. The screens around her showed data streaming in from the human forces in space. Every shot fired, every system hacked. Every piece of alien technology captured was being analyzed and cataloged by her teams. "The hegemony ships are using a centralized command structure," she reported to General Collins. "If we can take their flagship, the rest of their fleet will be crippled." "How long do you need?" Collins asked. "Give me 12 hours, and I can turn their own command systems against them." As the battle continued, the pattern became clear. The humans weren't just fighting to defend their world. They were learning. Every alien weapon fired at them was studied and copied. Every defensive system they encountered was analyzed and improved upon. The human forces grew stronger with each passing hour, while the hegemony fleet grew weaker and more confused. Admiral Thex found himself trapped on his own bridge as human soldiers worked their way through his ship. He could hear the sounds of battle growing closer, but what terrified him most was the silence that followed. His crew's communications went quiet one by one as the humans systematically took control of his vessel. When the bridge doors finally opened, Colonel Santos stepped through with only 5 soldiers behind him. The rest of Admiral Thex's bridge crew lay unconscious on the floor, their weapons having been useless against the humans' advanced armor. "You will surrender your fleet," Santos said in perfect hegemony language, "or we will take it from you piece by piece." Admiral Thex stared at the human in disbelief. "This is impossible. You are a primitive species. You should not have technology like this." Santos smiled grimly. "We didn't have it 6 months ago, but you kept sending us samples to study. Every ship you lost, every weapon you fired at us, every piece of equipment we captured, it all became part of our arsenal. You taught us how to fight you." The end came swiftly after that. With their flagship captured, the hegemony fleets coordinated. Attacks fell apart. Human fighters swarmed over the remaining ships like angry bees while boarding parties seized vessel after vessel. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move, using their own tactics against them with deadly efficiency. By the end of the 3rd day, 173 hegemony ships had been either destroyed or captured. The 27 vessels that managed to escape carried a message that Admiral Thex had never expected to send, a desperate warning to stay away from the Sol system. But his warning, like Commander Corvain's months before, would go unheeded. The galaxy still could not believe that a primitive species could defeat one of its most powerful fleets. The collective was already preparing their own invasion, convinced that the hegemony had simply made strategic errors. General Collins stood in his command center, looking at the tactical display that now showed dozens of captured alien ships being towed to Earth for study. Dr. Wright's teams were already at work, pulling apart hegemony technology and finding ways to improve it. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "long-range sensors are detecting another fleet approaching the system. Different technology signature. Looks like the collective." Collins nodded grimly. "How long until they arrive?" 2 months, sir." "Good. That should give Dr. Wright enough time to figure out how their biotechnology works." He turned to address his staff. "Gentlemen, we just graduated from basic training. Time to prepare for the advanced course." Outside, in the cold vacuum of space, the wreckage of the hegemony fleet drifted silently around Earth's orbit. Among the debris, automated systems recorded everything, preparing detailed reports for the next alien civilization foolish enough to test humanity's resolve. The humans had learned their first lesson in galactic warfare. The best way to defeat an advanced enemy was to make their technology your own, then use it better than they ever could. 2 months had passed since the hegemony fleet had been destroyed, and the collective was ready to correct what they saw as obvious mistakes. Overmind Prime controlled 500 ships from the central node vessel, its consciousness flowing through every crew member like water through connected pipes. Where the hegemony had failed through individual thinking and chaos, the collective would succeed through perfect unity and coordination. The primitive species defeated the hegemony through confusion and surprise. Overmind Prime communicated to its fleet, "We will not make their errors. Our minds are one. Our purpose is clear. We will assimilate this world and add their genetic diversity to our own." The collective fleet moved through space like a single living creature, each ship perfectly synchronized with the others. Their biotechnology ships looked more like giant insects than metal vessels, with organic hulls that could heal damage and adapt to threats. They had conquered 37 worlds using the same tactics, turning entire populations into willing servants of the collective consciousness. Dr. Karen Bell sat in her laboratory beneath the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by the remains of captured collective technology from earlier encounters. For weeks she had been studying the alien bio-neural networks, trying to understand how the collective's shared consciousness worked. What she had discovered both fascinated and terrified her. General Collins, she called over the communication system. "I think I've found their weakness." General Collins appeared on her screen, his face showing the strain of 2 months of constant preparation. "What have you got for us, Doctor?" "The collective's greatest strength is also their fatal flaw," Bell explained, holding up a piece of organic technology that pulsed with soft light. "They share everything through their neural network. Every thought, every experience, every piece of information flows through all of them at once. But that means if we can feed false information into their network, it will spread to every ship simultaneously. How do we do that? We need to capture one of their node ships and patch into their communication system. Once we're connected, I can flood their network with contradictory orders and false sensor data. It will be like giving them all a massive headache at the same time." While Dr. Bell worked on her plan, Colonel Rick Santos was training a new generation of soldiers. The men and women under his command now wore armor that combined the best of human engineering with captured alien technology. They moved faster, hit harder, and thought quicker than any human soldiers in history. "Remember," Santos told his troops as they prepared for the coming battle, "the collective shares their thoughts. That means when one of them sees you, they all see you. But it also means that when one of them panics, they all panic. Use that against them." Commander Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the Earthship Defiance, one of 12 vessels that had been built using captured hegemony technology and improved with human innovations. His crew was a mix of former Navy officers and civilian volunteers who had learned to operate alien systems through trial and error. They were not the most experienced space fleet in the galaxy, but they were certainly the most motivated. "Sir, collective fleet is entering the outer system," his sensors officer reported. 500 ships moving in perfect formation. Turner nodded grimly. "Signal the other ships. Operation Mindbreak is a go." The collective fleet approached Earth with confidence. Their bioships spread out in a pattern that would allow them to deploy their assimilation weapons across the entire planet simultaneously. But as they reached the orbit of Mars, something unexpected happened. Small human fighters appeared from behind asteroids and space debris, attacking with the same wild courage that had defeated the hegemony. But this time, the collective was ready. Their shared consciousness allowed them to coordinate their defenses perfectly, tracking every human ship and predicting their attack patterns. "The humans fight as predicted," Overmind Prime observed with satisfaction. "Their individual minds create chaos, but our unity makes us superior. Begin deployment of the assimilation spores." That was when Dr. Bell's plan went into action. 3 human ships that had been pretending to retreat suddenly changed, course heading straight for the collective's node ships. They were suicide missions, piloted by volunteers who knew they would not survive. Captain Ben Hayes, the same pilot who had helped defeat the hegemony, was leading one of those ships. His fighter had been modified to carry a special payload designed by Dr. Bell, a bio-neural transmitter that could interface with collective technology. "This is for humanity," Hayes said over the radio as his ship screamed toward the nearest node vessel. The collective ships fired everything they had, but Hayes's ship was too small and too fast. He crashed directly into the node ship's communication. Array and Dr. Bell's transmitter activated. Suddenly, the collective's perfect coordination became a nightmare. False information flooded their shared consciousness. Sensor readings showed human ships that didn't exist. Targeting systems reported weapons that weren't there. Navigation computers received conflicting orders from multiple sources. What is happening? Overmind Prime demanded, but its own thoughts were being drowned out by the chaos in the network. Every ship in the fleet was receiving different information, and the collective consciousness that had been their strength was tearing itself apart. Colonel Santos used the confusion to launch his boarding operations. His soldiers hit the collective ships just as their crews were struggling with the mental chaos. The aliens, who had always relied on their shared thoughts to coordinate their actions, found themselves unable to work together. "They're fighting each other," one of Santos's sergeants reported with amazement. "Half of them think we're attacking from the left. The other half think we're coming from the right." The collective's bioships began to malfunction as their organic systems received contradictory neural signals. Some ships fired on their own allies, believing them to be human vessels. Others shut down their weapons entirely, convinced that the battle was already over. Commander Turner watched from the Defiance as the mighty collective fleet destroyed itself in confusion. "All ships move in and finish them," he ordered. "But be careful. Some of them might still be dangerous." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The collective, who had conquered dozens of worlds through perfect coordination, found themselves helpless against an enemy that had turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Dr. Bell monitored the neural network from her laboratory, watching as the false information she had injected spread through the collective. "Consciousness like a virus. It's working better than I hoped," she reported to General Collins. "Their shared mind is having a complete breakdown. They can't tell what's real anymore." Individual collective ships began breaking away from the fleet, their crews trying desperately to escape the mental chaos that was consuming their species. But even those who fled carried the contaminated information with them, spreading the confusion to other collective worlds. Overmind Prime's final transmission was a warning that would never be heeded. "Do not engage the humans," it broadcast, as its node ship was overrun by human soldiers. "They do not fight as other species fight. They turn our strengths against us. They learn from every encounter. They are not the prey, they are the hunters." But the warning was lost in the mental static that filled the collective consciousness. By the time the battle ended, 463 collective ships had been destroyed or captured. The few survivors fled in terror, their once perfect coordination replaced by chaotic individual thought. General Collins stood in his command center, looking at reports from across the solar system. The second invasion had been defeated even more decisively than the first. His forces had grown stronger, more experienced, and more dangerous. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "long-range sensors are detecting another fleet. Different signature again. Looks like the Draconian Empire." Collins smiled grimly. "How many ships?" 1,000, sir. And they're not hiding their approach. It looks like they want us to see them coming." "Good," Collins said. "Dr. Bell, how long do you need to analyze the collective biotechnology we captured?" "Give me 4 months, and I can integrate their biological systems with our existing tech," Bell replied. "We could have ships that heal themselves and weapons that adapt to any threat." Collins nodded. "Then we'd better get to work. The Empire is coming, and I suspect they're going to be the toughest test yet." Outside, in the cold vacuum of space, the wreckage of 2 alien fleets drifted around Earth like a monument to human adaptability. The galaxy still refused to believe that a primitive species could defeat its most advanced civilizations. But with each victory, humanity was learning new ways to turn their enemies' advantages against them. The hunters were becoming stronger, and the Empire was about to learn why the galaxy should have listened to Commander Corvain's warnings. 4 months after the collective's defeat, Emperor Vaxith himself led the mightiest fleet in Draconian history, toward the small blue world that had somehow destroyed two of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. 1,000 ships filled, with the Empire's finest warriors approached Sol System with weapons that could crack planets and reduce entire star systems to cosmic dust. Unlike the previous invasions, Emperor Vaxth made no attempt to hide his arrival. His massive flagship, the Eternal Conquest, was 3 times larger than any ship humanity had ever seen. Its hull was covered in weapons that glowed like angry stars, and its shields could deflect the combined firepower of 100 lesser vessels. "Let the humans see us coming," the Emperor declared from his throne room, his reptilian features twisted in rage. "Let them know that their luck has run out. The hegemony failed because they underestimated primitive cunning. The collective failed because they relied too heavily on their shared consciousness. But the Empire will succeed because we understand the only language these creatures truly speak: overwhelming force." On Earth, Admiral Susan Grant stood on the bridge of the human flagship Retribution, watching the approaching Empire fleet on her screens. In the months since the last invasion, humanity had built an impressive space navy using captured technology from both previous attacks. 300 ships now defended Earth, each one a hybrid of human engineering and alien science. But Grant knew that numbers alone would not be enough. The Empire's ships were bigger, more heavily armed, and protected by shields that had never been penetrated in 1,000 years of conquest. Humanity needed something more than superior technology this time. They needed to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than their enemies could imagine. "Dr. Mitchell," Grant called to the chief scientist who had replaced Dr. Bell after her promotion to head of planetary defense. "Are your new weapons ready?" Dr. Tony Mitchell looked up from his console, his face grim but determined. "The planet cracker is online, Admiral. We reverse engineered it from Empire technology that Commander Corvain secretly provided to us. But we've made some improvements that even the Empire doesn't know about." Grant nodded. Commander Corvain had been secretly feeding intelligence to Earth for months, horrified by his government's refusal to heed his warnings. His information had been invaluable in preparing for this final battle. "And the Special Forces teams?" Grant asked. Colonel Santos appeared on her screen from his position aboard one of the assault ships. His soldiers now wore armor that combined the best features of all 3 alien technologies: hegemony energy shields, collective bioadaptation, and Empire strength enhancement. They were no longer quite human, but they were something far more dangerous. "My teams are ready, Admiral," Santos reported. "We've studied Empire ship layouts from Corvain's data. We know exactly where to hit them." Emperor Vaxth broadcast his ultimatum as his fleet took positions around Earth. His message was simple and brutal: surrender immediately, or watch their world burn. There would be no negotiations, no mercy, and no escape. The Empire had come to make an example that would terrify every species in the galaxy. Earth's response surprised him. Instead of cowering or pleading for mercy, the humans transmitted tactical data about his own fleet, ship positions, weapon capabilities, even the location of his personal quarters on the flagship. It was impossible. His ships used the most advanced stealth and encryption technology in the galaxy. "How do they know our formations?" his tactical officer asked nervously. Before the Emperor could answer, space around his fleet erupted in violence. But this time, the human attack was different from anything they had done before. Instead of small fighters darting between his ships, massive human vessels emerged from behind Earth's moon, their hulls gleaming with weapons that looked disturbingly familiar. Admiral Grant had learned from previous battles that the key to defeating superior forces was to make them fight on humanity's terms. Her fleet moved with a precision that rivaled the collective's coordination, but with an unpredictability that confused Empire tactical computers. "All ships execute Pattern Omega," she commanded. The human fleet split into 3 groups, each one attacking the Empire formation from a different angle. But these weren't desperate suicide runs like the earlier battles. These were calculated strikes designed to exploit weaknesses that Commander Corvain had provided. Dr. Mitchell's greatest creation came into play as the battle intensified. The planet cracker weapon that had been reverse-engineered from Empire technology was not aimed at an enemy ship. Instead, It targeted the space between the Empire vessels, creating gravitational distortions that pulled their perfectly ordered formation apart. Impossible, Emperor Vaxth snarled as his ships were scattered across the solar system. They're using our own weapons against us, but the worst was yet to come. As his fleet struggled to reform, human boarding parties began appearing on Empire, ships with a speed and efficiency that defied belief. Colonel Santos led the assault on the flagship itself, his enhanced soldiers moving through the massive vessel like ghosts. The Empire crew had never faced enemies like these. The humans fought with weapons that seemed to know exactly how to penetrate Empire armor. They moved through the ship as if they had studied its layout for years. Most terrifying of all, they fought with a combination of cold calculation and berserker fury that broke the morale of even the Empire's most veteran warriors. "Sir, they're in the engine room," one of the Emperor's officers reported in panic. "They've taken control of our power systems." "And they're on the command deck," another voice added. "They've captured the weapons control center." Emperor Vaxth realized that his massive flagship was being conquered from within by a force of fewer than 50 humans. It should have been impossible. His ship carried a crew of 10,000 of the Empire's finest soldiers. But somehow, the humans had turned his own vessel into a trap. Santos appeared on the Emperor's private bridge with only a small team behind him. The human colonel looked at the massive reptilian ruler with cold satisfaction. "Your empire ends here," Santos said in perfect Draconian. "Surrender your fleet or we'll take it ship by ship." Emperor Vaxth drew his ceremonial sword, a weapon that had never tasted defeat in 100 battles. "I am Emperor of the Galaxy. I do not surrender to primitives." The fight that followed was brief and decisive. Santos moved with enhanced speed and strength, his armor deflecting the Emperor's most powerful strikes. When it was over, the ruler of the galaxy's mightiest empire lay unconscious on the floor of his own throne room. The battle in space had turned into a rout. Human ships swarmed over the Empire fleet like angry hornets, their crews using tactics that seemed to anticipate every Empire countermove. Ship after ship fell to boarding parties or was destroyed by weapons that the Empire had thought were impossible to replicate. Admiral Grant watched from her flagship as the mighty Draconian fleet surrendered in groups. Some ships tried to flee, but human vessels pursued them with a relentless efficiency that spoke of months of careful planning. "Admiral," Dr. Mitchell reported with something like awe in his voice, "we've captured over 800 Empire ships. The technology we're getting from this will advance our science by centuries." But Grant's attention was focused on a small message that appeared on her private communication channel. It was from Commander Corvain, still aboard one of the few Empire ships that had managed to escape. "You have done the impossible," his message read. "3 times now your species has proven that the galaxy underestimated you. But this victory will change everything. The other civilizations will unite. Against you now, they will see Earth as the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known." Grant smiled grimly as she composed her reply. "Let them come. We'll be ready." In the months that followed, word of humanity's victories spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had never agreed on anything began forming alliances against the new threat from Sol System. But they were too late. Earth's captured fleets had already begun exploring beyond their home system, carrying human soldiers and scientists to worlds that had never imagined such creatures could exist. Commander Corvain sent one final report to the Galactic Council, knowing it would be his last. "I tried to warn you," he wrote. "I showed you the evidence. I begged you to listen. But you saw only what you wanted to see. Now humanity has your weapons, your ships, and your technology. They have learned to hunt among the stars, and we taught them how." The report ended with a single line that would haunt the galaxy for generations to come. "The prey has become the predator, and we have no one to blame but ourselves." On Earth, General Collins stood in his command center, looking at star maps that showed human ships moving toward a dozen different worlds. The galaxy had sent 3 invasion fleets to conquer one small planet. Instead, they had created the greatest military force the universe had ever seen. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. The best way to defend your home was to make sure your enemies could never threaten it again. The hunt was just beginning.